I come back home and find mom's BF has moved in with his kid, and then he punched the wall to threaten me, and my mom sided with him. So I moved to live with my dad, but later they need my help, and they are desperate. Before we begin the story, take a moment to support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Your support means the world to our channel and helps us spread more shocking true stories to light. Now let's get started. A normal childhood, until it wasn't. Hey, my name's Jake. I'm 22 now, but this story starts long before that. I had what you'd call a pretty regular childhood. Played football in middle school. Not great at it, but I held my own. Defense was my thing. I wasn't the fastest, but I could hit hard enough that people thought twice before running my way. My coach used to say I had good instincts. My dad, Mark, is 46. He taught me how to fish when I was 9, and every summer, before things fell apart, we'd go camping. Those were the best times. We'd load up his old Chevy Tahoe with way too much gear and head out to Lake Meredith. We weren't exactly living off the land, unless you count a cooler full of hot dogs and sodas, but Dad did teach me how to catch catfish, clean them, and cook them over an open fire. Even now, it's one of the most useful skills I have. I'm the oldest of 3. My sister, Emma, is 17 and scary smart. The kind of smart that skips a grade and still gets straight A's. My brother, Liam, is 15, the artistic one. He's always drawing or making something out of whatever he can find. We were just a normal suburban family. 2-story house in a decent neighborhood, not rich, not struggling, just comfortable. Dad worked as a sales manager for a medical supply company. Mom, Laura, was a part-time dental hygienist. We had a Nintendo Switch we'd fight over, a trampoline in the backyard that the neighborhood kids would come over to use, and Friday night movie marathons with popcorn. Life was good. Then everything changed. I was 13 when my parents sat us down in the living room and told us they were getting divorced. I remember Dad having tears in his eyes, which scared the hell out of me because I had never seen him cry before. Not once. Mom just looked empty. They gave us the standard speech, the one every kid of divorced parents has heard. We still love you. We just can't be together anymore. As if that was supposed to make any of it hurt less. It didn't. It just made everything more confusing. At first, it wasn't terrible. The custody arrangement was 50-50ths. 1 week at Mom's, 1 week at Dad's. Mom moved into a 3-bedroom apartment about 20 minutes away, while Dad kept the house. It was an adjustment, sure, but we managed. The worst part was packing a bag every Sunday night to switch houses. I always felt like I was forgetting something important. For a while, Mom seemed okay. She took us to the movies, decorated the apartment with little things to make it feel homey, and even started taking classes at the community college. Said she wanted to become a dental assistant instead of just a hygienist. Then she met Rick, and everything went to hell. The day everything changed. I'll never forget the day Rick entered our lives. It was supposed to be just another normal weekend at Mom's. We walked into the apartment like usual, but something was off. There were extra shoes by the door. A strange jacket slung over the couch. And then, sitting at the dinner table like he belonged there, was this guy, big, broad-shouldered, probably in his late 40s, with a thick salt and pepper beard and faded blue tattoos covering his forearms. Next to him sat a girl, maybe a couple of years younger than me, staring down at her hands and twirling her hair around her finger like she wanted to disappear. Mom smiled, way too forced, and said, "Kids, this is Rick and his daughter, Megan." That was it. No warning. No, hey, I've been seeing someone. Just boom. Instant new family. Rick stood up, grinning like we were all about to be best friends. "Hey guys, heard a lot about you." I didn't say anything. Neither did Emma or Liam. We were all just staring, trying to process what the hell was happening. Rick didn't seem to notice the tension. Figured it was time we all got to know each other, huh? His voice was loud, like he was used to talking over machinery, even when he didn't need to. Megan barely spoke at all. Just nodded when Mom asked her if she wanted more mashed potatoes, her eyes darting between her dad and us like she was waiting for something bad to happen. That should have been the first red flag. The second red flag? The fact that they were already living there. Mom hadn't even mentioned she was dating someone, and now, suddenly, they were moving in? No conversation. No discussion. Just, this is your life now, deal with it. I remember going back to Dad's after that weekend and him asking how things went. I just shrugged. Mom's got a boyfriend now. And his kid. Dad nodded slowly. You want to talk about it? I didn't. I should have. Because I had no idea how bad things were about to get. The first time Rick snapped. At first, Rick played the role of the nice guy. The classic honeymoon phase. He brought home ice cream, made dumb dad jokes, and even offered to help me with math homework, which was a joke because the dude couldn't even figure out percentages. Mom acted like everything was great, like this was all perfectly normal. But it only took about 3 weeks for the mask to slip. I'll never forget the first time I saw him lose it. It was over something so stupid. Liam had left a glass on the coffee table without a coaster. That's it. Just a glass. Rick walked in, saw it, and exploded. Who the hell left this here? His voice boomed through the apartment, veins popping out of his neck like one of those anatomy models from science class. Liam, who was only 10 at the time, froze. His hands trembled as he mumbled, I did. Sorry. Rick didn't even hesitate. He turned, pulled back his fist, and punched the wall. Hard. The drywall cracked under his knuckles, leaving a jagged hole right beside the couch. Liam flinched so violently he nearly fell off the couch. His eyes went wide with fear. I jumped up, my pulse hammering. My body locked up between two instincts, fight or flight. Then Mom came rushing in from the kitchen. She took one look at the hole in the wall, and instead of checking on her terrified son, she went straight to Rick, placing a hand on his arm. It's okay, honey. It's just a little hole. We can patch it up, she said, her voice soothing. She didn't even look at Liam. Not once. Rick huffed, shaking out his hand like he was the one who'd been wronged, then stormed off, muttering something about respect and lazy kids. I put my arm around Liam, pulling him close. His whole body was trembling. That was the moment I knew. Rick wasn't just some strict stepdad. He was a ticking time bomb. And my mom? She had already chosen whose side she was on, living with a walking time bomb. That first outburst? It was just the beginning. Rick had the shortest fuse of anyone I'd ever met. 1 second he'd be fine. The next he'd be putting his fist through something because dinner wasn't ready on time or his boss called him on a Saturday. It got worse. He threw his phone across the room, once just because he didn't like what someone said on the other end. Another time, he put his fist straight through the bathroom door because someone used his towel. He even kicked the dog's food bowl across the kitchen because it was in his way. And every time, my mom would clean up after him, literally and figuratively. She patched the holes in the walls, replaced the broken doors, smoothed things over with he's just passionate, or he had a rough childhood. My personal favorite? He's under a lot of pressure at work. Yeah, because that totally justified terrorizing 3 kids. The worst part? He wanted us to respect him, wanted us to call him Dad. One time I was talking about my actual father, and I said Dad in front of Rick. He got in my face so fast I barely had time to react. I put food on your table and a roof over your head, he growled. I'm a man of this house now. I wanted to tell him that it was technically my mom's apartment, that my real dad paid child support that probably covered most of our food, but I knew better. We all learned fast. Don't argue with Rick unless you want to see something get broken. So we adapted. Emma, Liam, and I developed this unspoken system, a way to communicate without saying a word. A glance meant, Rick's about to blow. Get to your room. A quick nod meant, distract him while I help Emma get away. We became a unit. We had to, because it felt like Mom had completely checked out. I hit the gym harder than ever. Every single day after school, I was there, partly to stay out of the house, partly because I knew that one day I might have to defend myself. Or worse, defend my siblings. Rick was bigger than me, but I was getting stronger every month. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't scared of him, preparing for the inevitable. By the time I was 16, the gym had become more than just an escape. It was my training ground. I lifted, ran, and pushed my body harder than I ever had before. Not because I wanted to be some star athlete, but because deep down I knew one day I might have to stop Rick. I wasn't the only one who noticed. There was this trainer at the gym, Miguel. Older guy, built like a tank, and always watching people's form. One day, he walked up while I was working on my deadlifts and said, "You come here a lot. You serious about this? Or just lifting to impress girls?" I shrugged, just trying to get stronger. Miguel studied me for a second. Then without prying, he started giving me pointers, little things that made a big difference. Over time, those pointers turned into full-on training. Eventually, he started showing me how to box. Lifting's good, he said one night, wrapping my hands before we hit the mitts. But strength without control? That's just a loaded gun with a loose trigger. He never asked why I was so driven, but something told me he understood anyway. By my junior year, I was benching 225, squatting 315, and throwing punches that actually had power behind them. I wasn't looking for a fight, but I wanted to be ready if one came. And Rick, he noticed. He started making these little comments. Getting pretty big there, tough guy. Or, what are you trying to prove with all those muscles? I never responded. I just stared back. And every single time, he was the one who looked away first. Meanwhile, Mom was getting worse. It was like she was fading, drifting further and further away from the woman who used to sing while making breakfast, who used to actually ask how her day was. She dropped her classes, stopped seeing her friends. Her entire life became about keeping Rick happy, keeping the peace, making sure we didn't do anything to set him off. It was like she was disappearing in front of us, and there was nothing we could do to stop it. The breaking point. By the time I was 17, Rick's anger wasn't just about walls and furniture anymore. He started directing it at my dad. At school events or pickups, he'd get in my dad's face, throwing out threats like, "I'll mess you up if you ever cross the line." The first time it happened was at Emma's band concert. My dad had come to sit with us. Normal, right? Mom and Dad. Bạn đã nói? Continue. Chat đã nói? At school events, even after the divorce. But Rick, he wasn't having it. "That's my seat," he muttered when Dad sat down. "There are plenty of other seats," Dad said calmly, not looking for a fight. Rick leaned in and whispered something I couldn't hear. But I saw the way Dad's face paled, the way his jaw clenched. Without a word, he stood up and moved a few rows back. That should have been the end of it. But Rick, he wasn't the type to let things go. Later that night, I overheard my dad on the phone with my uncle. He said he'd be waiting for me in the parking lot, Dad admitted. Said I need to learn what happens when I don't respect another man's family. But Dad never took the bait. Every time Rick ran his mouth, Dad just walked away. "This isn't the time or place, Rick." That was always his response. And Rick hated it, because he wanted a reaction. He wanted a fight. But Dad, he was playing the long game. I found out later he had been documenting every single threat. Every time Rick tried to start something, every incident, every outburst, he wrote it all down. He was building a case. And he wasn't the only one. Because while Rick was busy trying to intimidate my dad, things at home were spiraling out of control. Rick started drinking more. Not just a few beers after work, hard liquor, straight whiskey at dinner. By the time he finished eating, he was already looking for a reason to be pissed off. One night, that reason was Emma. She was texting at the dinner table. Pretty normal for a teenager, right? But Rick wasn't having it. "Put the damn phone away," he snapped. She mumbled an apology, still finishing a text. Rick snatched the phone out of her hands and, without hesitation, threw it across the room. It smashed against the wall, screen shattering instantly. Emma gasped, staring at the broken phone like she couldn't believe it was real. And that was it. I was done. I pushed my chair back, standing up so fast it scraped against the floor. Rick stood up too, squaring his shoulders. "You got something to say, tough guy?" he sneered. He was chest-bumping me now, trying to get me to swing first. I could smell the alcohol on his breath, feel the heat radiating off of him. For a second, every fiber in my body screamed at me to hit him. Just one punch. One clean shot to the jaw. But I didn't, because I knew how this would go. He'd call the cops, say I attacked him, and suddenly we'd be even more trapped in this nightmare. So instead, I leaned in, lowering my voice. "Touch my sister again," I said, my hands clenched into fists, "and you'll find out." Then I turned, grabbed Emma and Liam, and walked out the door. Mom didn't stop us. Didn't even try. We sat on the curb outside the apartment complex, waiting for my dad to pick us up. Emma was crying, not just about the phone, but about everything. Liam kept looking over his shoulder, like he was expecting Rick to come charging out after us. I put an arm around both of them, holding them close. "This isn't forever," I promised. "We're going to get out of this." And that was the last night we ever stayed at Mom's house. Because my dad, he was done waiting. The next morning, he went to court for full custody. And this time, he won, fighting for our freedom. Sitting in that courtroom, testifying against my own mother, was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I sat in the witness chair, hands gripping the edges, and told the judge everything. Every explosion, every hole in the walls, every time Rick made us feel unsafe in our own home. I didn't sugarcoat it. I didn't hold back. And the whole time, my mom sat there, staring down at her hands. Not at me, not at Emma or Liam, just at her hands, like if she ignored us hard enough, none of this would be real. Emma testified next. She talked about how Rick broke her phone, how she was scared to be at home, how she had to learn to read his moods like a weather report, just to avoid getting caught in the storm. Then Liam. He was the youngest, but he didn't hold back either. He told the judge about the night Rick punched the wall over stupid glass, about how he learned to make himself small, to stay out of the way. By the time we were done, the courtroom was dead silent. Then the judge turned to Rick. "Do you have anything to say about these allegations?" Rick leaned forward, his face blank, and said, "I don't have an anger problem. I have a problem with disrespectful kids who don't appreciate what I do for them." The judge's face? Priceless. Like he couldn't believe someone would actually be stupid enough to say that out loud in a custody hearing. Mom didn't say a word, didn't defend us, didn't even look at us. And that's how we knew. Even after everything, she wasn't going to choose us. She was going to choose him. The ruling came fast. Dad got full custody. Mom was allowed supervised visitation, but only in public places, restaurants, parks. Never at her house. Never anywhere Rick might be. The judge made one thing crystal clear. Rick was not to be present at any visitations. As for me, I was supposed to have mandatory weekly phone calls with Mom until I turned 18. Some legal technicality about maintaining the parent-child relationship. But it didn't matter, because as soon as we left that courtroom, we were free. The adjustment to living full-time with Dad wasn't easy, but it was real. For the first time in years, we could actually breathe. Dad stepped up in ways I never expected. He learned how to cook meals for 3 kids, how to handle Emma's school stuff, how to deal with Liam's anxiety. He even took a demotion at work so he could be home more often. Our house became a home again. I still shared a room with Liam, but Dad converted part of the garage into a teen cave for us, a space to hang out, play video games, just exist without tension. Emma got her own room, since she was the only girl. The first few months, we all had nightmares. Liam would wake up screaming some nights. Emma flinched every time she heard a loud noise. And me? I'd lie awake, waiting for the sound of a door slamming, waiting for Rick's voice to come tearing through the house, only to remember he wasn't there anymore. Dad never pushed us to talk about it, but if we needed him, he was there. Some nights, when Liam woke up shaking, Dad would sit on the edge of the bed, just there until we fell back asleep. No lectures, no pressure, just presence. And for the first time in years, that was enough. Christmas that year was weird. Mom kept texting, saying she wanted to see us, wanted us to come over, have dinner, exchange gifts. Dad didn't tell us what to do. He left it up to us. And all 3 of us made the same decision. We stayed home. We sent her gifts through the mail. Nothing for Rick, obviously. She did the same. Opening presents from someone who felt like a stranger? Yeah, that was weird. But we were done pretending. Because for the first time in a long time, we weren't walking on eggshells. We were safe. And that was worth more than any Christmas gift in the world. Moving on without her. Time passed. And with every day that went by, Mom felt more and more like a memory. The weekly phone calls she was supposed to have with me, they became nothing more than empty small talk. Mom, how's school? Me, fine. Mom, are you eating enough? Me, yep. Mom, I miss you. Me, gotta go. Meeting some friends. Every call was the same. Forced. Awkward. A chore. She never apologized. Never really acknowledged what she had done. The one time I confronted her, told her she had lost her 3 kids because of him, you know what she said? Megan needs me. She has no one else. Like we didn't need her too. Like Rick's daughter. This girl we barely knew was somehow more important than the 3 kids she had raised. That was the last time I tried to make sense of it. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I just felt nothing. Like she was a teacher I had in elementary school. Someone I used to know, but barely thought about now. Meanwhile, Dad was thriving. A year after he got custody, he started dating again. He was careful about it. Never introduced us to anyone unless he was serious. Never forced anything. Then came Claire. She was a nurse practitioner, divorced, no kids of her own. And from the very first time we met, I could tell she wasn't trying too hard. She didn't force conversations or pretend to be interested in our lives just to win points. She just showed up. When Liam mentioned he was struggling with a science project, she gave him ideas without taking over. When Emma gushed about some Netflix show, Claire actually watched it just to have something to bond over. She and Dad got married last year. Small backyard ceremony, nothing fancy. She brought her cat, Jasper, into the house, which somehow managed to get along with Dad's golden retriever, Max. Claire never tried to replace our mom. She just became another solid person in our lives. Someone we could actually count on. The difference between her and Rick couldn't be more obvious. Fast forward to now. I'm 22. I work as a personal trainer at a local gym. Not making bank, but I'm doing all right. Miguel, the guy who trained me back in high school, hooked me up with a job after I graduated. I didn't go to college right away. Needed time to figure things out. But now, I'm taking some business classes at night, thinking maybe I'll open my own gym one day. I have my own place now. Nothing fancy. A one-bedroom apartment close enough to the gym that I can run there for morning workouts. I also have a dog, a 75-pound German shepherd named Diesel. Found him at a rescue event 2 years ago. Someone abandoned him because he got too big. Their loss. Because Diesel? He's the best damn roommate I could ask for. Even if he does hog the bed. Dating has been hit or miss. Had a serious girlfriend for about a year after high school, but she got tired of competing with my work schedule. Had a couple of casual things since then, but nothing that stuck. Right now, I'm seeing this nurse named Amber. Met her at the gym when she came in for a free training session. We hit it off. Been dating for 3 months. She gets the crazy schedule because hers is just as bad with hospital shifts. And bonus, she thinks the fighting thing is hot. So that's a win. Emma's killing it in school. She's looking at pre-med programs, probably going to get a full scholarship because of her insane grades. Liam's following in my footsteps with lifting. Kid is getting built for his age. Not as into the fighting aspect, but he's really into powerlifting. Already pulling more than guys twice his age. Dad's happier than I've ever seen him. He and Claire have even talked about fostering kids down the line. And Mom? Mom is still with Rick. Still toxic. Still making excuses. For what Emma tells me, their relationship has gotten even worse. Rick has pushed away everyone in their lives. Mom's visitation with my siblings got cut back even more because she kept trying to sneak Rick into meetings. Once, she set up a lunch with Emma and Liam at a restaurant, only for Rick to coincidentally show up. The judge didn't take kindly to that little stunt. And honestly, I don't even hate her anymore. She's just a stranger. A ghost of the person who used to be my mom. I don't have time for ghosts. Then, one Friday night, my phone rang. It was Mom. We weren't supposed to have our scheduled call until Sunday. For a second, I almost ignored it. And something in my gut told me to pick up. Her voice was shaking. Jason collapsed. It took me a second to realize who she meant. Rick. She was crying now. He was just sitting there watching TV, and then he grabbed his chest and fell over. The ambulance came. They think it's his heart. I didn't say anything. I didn't feel anything. Then she said the thing that made me laugh. Actually laugh. I need you to come stay with Megan. I can't leave her alone, and I need to be at the hospital. I shook my head. You want me to babysit the girl you chose over your own kids? Please, Jake. No. And I hung up. The audacity to ask. After I hung up, I went back to watching the game with my friends like nothing happened. I wasn't angry. I wasn't upset. I just didn't care. Rick was in the hospital? Good. Maybe karma finally decided to handle him for me. But Mom? The fact that she thought she could call me after everything and ask me for a favor? That was almost funny. Almost. An hour later, my phone rang again. This time, I let it go to voicemail. Then the text started. Mom, please, Jake. Megan shouldn't be alone right now. Mom, I'm begging you. Just this one time. Then, plan B. Mom, if you won't come here, can I drop Megan off at your place? I laughed out loud. Actually laughed. Megan was what, 20 now? A grown-ass adult. And even if she wasn't, that wasn't my problem. I texted back one word. Me, no. Her response came fast. Mom, Jake, she's very upset. She shouldn't be alone right now. Me. And that's my problem because she took a few minutes to answer. Then she hit me with the classic line. Mom, because we're family. I stared at my phone for a long moment, then typed out my response. Me, no, Mom. We're not family. We're two people who are legally required to have a phone call once a week. That's it. I could almost hear the stunned silence on her end. Then finally, Mom, how can you be so cold? I didn't even dignify that with an answer. I just blocked her number for the night and went back to my life. She didn't stop there. She started calling my dad, blowing up his phone now. He lasted about 4 calls before he picked up and told her, word for word, to go to hell and take Rick with you. But the next night, she took things a step further. She showed up at my apartment. I heard the knocking around 9 p.m. Diesel immediately got up, ears perked, growling low in his throat. I checked the peephole, and there she was, eyes red and puffy from crying, clutching her purse like it contained the last bit of dignity she had left. I didn't open the door. I just called through it. You need to leave. Please, she whispered. Just 5 minutes. No. Her voice cracked. Jake, I'm begging you. I leaned against the door, exhaling slowly. You made your choice, Mom. My voice was steady. Cold. Now you get to live with it. She stood there for another minute. Then finally she left. Diesel stayed by the door, still growling. I gave him an extra treat that night. For being a good judge of character. I called my dad to give him a heads up. Told you she'd pull something like this, he muttered. You okay? Yeah. Good. You did the right thing. Emma texted me a little while later. Emma, Mom's been blowing up my phone too. Me? Block her for a few days. She didn't argue. Because we both knew Mom wasn't reaching out because she suddenly cared about us. She was reaching out because she had no one else left. And that was her fault. Watching her desperation. By Monday, Mom had shifted from pathetic begging to outright guilt-tripping. First came the texts. Mom, you're taking your anger at me and Rick out on an innocent girl. Mom, Megan is suffering and you don't even care. Mom, you think you're better than Rick? A real man would step up in a family emergency. That last one almost made me lose it. I fired back. Me? You didn't raise me at all for the last 5 years. A judge literally decided you were unfit to. She didn't respond after that. Guess that one hit too close to home. But just when I thought she'd finally given up, she showed up at my gym. I was in the middle of a session with one of my regulars, Bill, a retired guy trying to get back in shape after a diabetes diagnosis, when she walked in. She looked rough. Messy hair, dark circles under her eyes, still wearing the same clothes from Sunday night. I sighed, loudly. She spotted me and marched over, completely ignoring Bill. I need to talk to you, she announced. I didn't even pause the session. Just kept counting as Bill finished his set of seated rows. You need to leave, I said flatly. It's an emergency, she insisted. Bill, who is probably the nicest guy on the planet, offered to take a break. I nodded at him in thanks and turned back to Mom. Fine. Say what you need to say, then go. She wasted no time launching into some dramatic, tearful speech about Rick's condition. Mom, they found blockages in 3 arteries. He needs bypass surgery, but the insurance is being difficult. I need to be at the hospital, but Megan is falling apart. She hasn't eaten in 2 days. I have no one else to turn to. I folded my arms. What about Rick's family? She hesitated. They don't talk to us anymore. I raised an eyebrow. Why not? She looked down, fidgeting with the strap of her purse. Jason had a falling out with his brother a few years ago. And his parents, they never approved of us getting together so soon after I divorced your father. I let out a sharp breath. What about your sisters? Your friends from work? She swallowed hard. Nobody will help us. I tilted my head. And why do you think that is? She didn't answer. So I answered for her. Maybe it's because Rick is an abusive piece of shit who ran off everyone in his life. And maybe it's because you spent years making excuses for him. She flinched like I had slapped her. That's not fair. No, you know what's not fair? My voice was calm, steady, but I could feel my heart pounding. Having to walk on eggshells in your own home because some rage-fueled asshole might punch a hole in the wall if you breathe wrong. Watching your mother choose a violent man over her own kids. spending your teenage years in therapy because your home life was so messed up. She burst into tears. I didn't care, because this was years of pain finally spilling out of me. She wasn't crying because she was sorry. She was crying because, for the first time, she had no one left to clean up her mess. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to stay calm. "Where's Megan now?" "At the house," she sniffed. "She won't eat. She won't answer my calls." Jesus Christ. So she left a potentially suicidal young woman alone just to come harass me at work? Mother of the Year. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Here's what's going to happen. I'll arrange for a professional caregiver to check on Megan. I'll even pay for a few days. But that's it. I'm not playing family with you. You made your choice years ago. She looked like she wanted to argue, but she had no leverage. Finally, she nodded. As I walked her out of the gym, she kept mumbling about how she'd make it up to me, how things would be different now. I just nodded, not bothering to respond, because I knew the truth. She wasn't sorry. She was desperate. That night, I did some research and found a crisis care service, specialized in mental health situations. They'd make sure Megan ate, took any medication she needed, and, most importantly, didn't hurt herself. It cost me $600. Money I didn't really have to spare, but it was worth it. Not for Mom, not for Rick, for Megan. Because no matter how I felt about her dad or my mom, she was just another victim of their toxic bullshit, just like we had been. The next morning, Mom texted me. "Mom, the lady you sent is very nice. Thank you." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say, because sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's moving on. It's living well. And sometimes it's watching someone finally realize exactly what they threw away when they need it most. No closure, just freedom. Rick survived. Mom texted me yesterday like I was supposed to care. "Mom, surgery went well. He's stable. Thank God." I stared at the message for a solid minute. Then I put my phone down and took Diesel out for a run. It was a perfect day, blue skies, warm sun, that crisp morning air that makes you feel alive. On the way home, I picked up some steaks and grilled them out on my patio while listening to a podcast about starting your own business. The world kept turning, just like it always does. Rick lived, but it didn't matter, because in my world, he was already gone. A few days later, a buddy of mine sent me a screenshot from Facebook. It was a post from my mom. "Praise God, he's coming home. Family is everything." I almost laughed. Almost. Because family is everything. She had 3 kids, and she lost all of them. But sure, Mom, whatever helps you sleep at night. I blocked her on all social media after that. Deleted her number from my phone. Decided those mandatory weekly phone calls, they were now monthly emails. Because my time, it's too valuable to waste on people who don't deserve it. People ask me sometimes if I'll go to Rick's funeral when he finally dies. My answer? Hell no. I won't celebrate. I won't dance on his grave. But I won't pretend to mourn him either. Some people leave the world better than they found it. Others? They make everything they touch worse. Rick is firmly in that second category. And me? I'm just glad I made it out. I don't know who needs to hear this, but I'll say it anyway. You don't owe people a place in your life just because they share your blood. You don't have to forgive people who never asked for it. And you sure as hell don't have to save people who wouldn't have saved you. Sometimes, walking away isn't weakness. It's survival. And sometimes, it's the strongest thing you'll ever do. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe for more real-life family dramas. Let me know in the comments what you think about today's story. Was it fair or totally messed up? See you in the next one.